Jonathan Crandall. And John is the owner, founder, entrepreneur in charge of JC Grounds Management I always think of you in Boston, but are you in Boston?
We're very close. So we're 20 miles north of the city.
Oh, okay, cool. And what's the town called where the business is located, where you're located?
Sure. We're in the corporate offices on the North Shore. We're currently expanding throughout the state of Massachusetts. So we've got a few other branch locations.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, we need to talk about that. So I always think of you as Jonathan the Iceman, because we met 10 years ago at our entrepreneurial master's program in Boston at the MIT. And your business was predominantly doing snow and ice removal, which, being in Massachusetts is a big thing in winter. So I was just amazed by your business, but that's how I think of you. But in the last 10 years, I've seen lots of photos of you hiking with your dog and being a family man. So how do you usually introduce yourself?
I like to we utilize traction here in our business. So my title's been for the past 10 years. So has been chief visionary. Um, but I'm CEO seat. So I myself as many business every year. I seem to every year take off one hat and taking on another hat. So currently today, my large, I'd say the role I spend a lot of my time in outside of coaching the team is in real estate, is where we're acquiring real estate that takes on a specific zoning in order to do to scale the business at this point.
Yeah. Your sound is going on and off a little bit, a bit crackly every now and then. So what I got from that was you're the chief visionary, you're in the CEO seat. So you introduce yourself as being the CEO, helping and driving the team to scale the business. And you mentioned you use traction in your business. So I want to have a chat with you about that one as well. What about the hiking? When did that start? How did that sort of develop? Because you have an amazing dog, I saw, who comes with you on all your intrepid travelers.
Yes, yeah. Several years back, I had brought on a life coach, and they the person that this woman Bonnie Gorby, amazing woman, she had basically exposed to me that I was spending most of my time in business and very little less time with family myself. So I started getting in better shape, and then I started hiking because that was something that I enjoyed to do that would keep me in good shape. So I've begun to do a lot of different hiking lists in the mountains of New Hampshire.
Yeah, cool. And what's your favorite trail?
Geez, it's tough, but one of the ones that I've done was hiking across the Grand Canyon. They call it the rim to rim to rim, and that was probably the most intense and most rewarding.
Yeah, yeah. And you must be quite fit now to do that. I
Um,
I have a husband who likes to hike as well, and when he goes on his walk, he goes like, "Oh, I'm going for a 15-mile hike. You want to come?" And I'm like, "Yeah, nah."
yeah, no, it is. You have to be fit, and there's definitely on the longer hikes, there's a lot of mental preparation. I think
Mm, yeah. And how are you able to take so much time out of your business? Because, like I said, my husband loves to walk and hike, and I know how much time is involved with walking and hiking. So, what have you done in your business? What have you changed in your business to enable you to go for those longer hikes?
I think definitely getting the right team in place, and then also for myself, just realizing that life coach had really brought to my attention was we need to recharge our batteries as entrepreneurs. And that thing that, I think a lot of, at least in the US here, a lot of, and I'm sure it's true there too, but a lot of entrepreneurs have the mindset of, feeling guilty if they're leaving the office earlier than the team or not putting in as much time. And the reality was changing that mindset to realize that if I wasn't recharged, I was actually doing a disservice to our team by not coming to the table fully charged up. And what I've looked at is more and more ways to recharge. So hiking is one, getting out in nature, being with my family on occasion, simple things like going to get, it sounds funny, but going to get a massage or whatever it is that recharges my batteries, whatever, it's different for everybody, but I've really recognized what the things are that do recharge my batteries, and I make sure to make time for them.
Yeah. And that is such an important discovery. I suppose it is a discovery, isn't it? Like to figure out what it is that makes you again, and not just the entrepreneur, not just go and running yourself into the ground. Because there is a lot of people that are having burnout and burnout symptoms, especially in the entrepreneurial community. So do you talk about this a lot with other entrepreneurs?
I talk about it with other entrepreneurs, and I talk about it with our team too, because we can see it happening with some of the people on the team here as well. And just saying, what works for me may not work for them. So they have to discover that themselves, and you'll know when you're. I think it is that recharging. And the other thing that I've learned kind of the hard way is. I don't know if you follow Strategic Coach, but Dan Sullivan talks a lot about your unique ability and what it is that, what's the 1, 2, or 3 things that you love to do. If we spend our time in those lanes as opposed to doing things we don't love to do, those batteries will stay charged longer.
Yeah. And what is your top 3? What is it that you love to do?
That's a great question. I love, I think naturally I'm a bit of a people person or a salesperson. So I love the art of the deal. I love conversation and talking to our clientele, our customers, and our staff, helping our staff members and our customers achieve things they didn't think they could, one way, shape, or another. That gives me a ton of energy.
Yeah.
So, I think that's probably my main lane. And then just building, whether it's, my brother said to me when I was a kid, I started the company when I was 16. I really didn't get it cranking until after I got out of the university. And my brother said, he goes, I'm going to do well in business because you love things and you can never stop business. That was a really interesting insight because I never thought of. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just stop you for 1 second. Do you have like an iPhone headset or something that you can plug into your laptop? Because your microphone is, your answers are amazing, but I'm missing half. I mean, I can sort of kind of get to, because it sounds like a robot.
Sure. I think it might have to do with the live stream and the distance of us, because I've been using it all day long on Zoom here.
Okay. Maybe just on my end.
No, it could be both of us, just the platform. But I don't have, unfortunately, I have this, but it's not charged up.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's not helping. Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, I can sort of get what you're saying, but it sort of goes on and off, from normal to robotic to normal to robotic. So
maybe the connection here.
Yeah, I don't know. Doesn't matter. We'll just keep going, because what you were saying, I mean, your life coach obviously had a really big impact and influence on your life, and finding that top 3. How have you taken that newfound knowledge of, what's my top 3 that keeps my batteries recharged? What is it that I need to do to avoid burnout? How have you taken that into your business, because you mentioned at the start that your team is super important for the scaling up of your company. So how have you taken that across?
Yeah, I think just sharing with some of the team what I've done and kind of my journey in that sense. A lot of them, not everybody, but a chunk of them have done similar things. Whether or not I was an influence in that or not,
Mm,
I won't know. But we do, we don't frown upon people being able to take time off, being able to go to their lake house or whatever it is that recharges them. We do as a company. We'll have company events, that get us all together and are things that are fun to do, and that's all intentional, of course. On the big snowstorms, the longer storms, like kind of a silly thing, I'll bring my dog in, who will ease a little bit of stress, I think. And then we've also brought in a person to do like chair massages, stuff like that. It's just anything to try to ease the stress a
mm.
little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And what is the biggest stressor in your business at the moment for the team?
I would say the long term, long duration, we call them snow and ice events, because we're working for hospitals and just large industrial sites, and there's a lot of pressure there to make sure it's safe and they're passable in the winter. So
Mm,
those events that just last a long time cause some stress.
yeah. And is that stress from an endurance point of view, that it just keeps going and going and going and it just doesn't stop?
It is, yeah, definitely endurance and then you have people that are we've this year we'll have about 800 to 1,000 employees, so you have people that are having a hard time with it, and I think our managers are coaching them, keep stress. They're talking to those team members and getting them through the
Yeah.
storms, and just encouraging them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly. So let's talk about the evolution of your business, because like I said, when we met 10 years ago, um, you were predominantly focusing on snow and ice removal. I remember that, and you were just talking about. I think that was year two where you were like, I think I need to expand. I need to do more than just snow and ice, because it's seasonal. So what do I do in the off season rather than just the maintenance on the snow and ice removal machinery? So how have you taken your business from snow and ice removal to what it is now? Because it is so much more.
yeah. There's a few things we have offered more services like the landscaping or landscape maintenance and whatnot. But the other thing that I did was I went around the country and found a lot of the best of the best in our industry, the largest companies, and looked at what they were doing and how they were doing it. And what we did find, Ivanka, is we ended up staying still predominantly so nice, strip down our costs. Basically, we're still working on that, but
Mm,
to a point where we are working on that service all year round, but we're performing and executing it only about 5 or 6 months.
mm,
So it takes us so long to get our equipment up to speed and to get the right amount of people to come in seasonally, that we just streamline into that one thing and do it really, really well and manage the costs. We can still do very well with it. And that's what we're doing now. So we're this year we're forecasted to do about 18 million in revenue, and about 16 million of that is snow. So that kind of gives you an
mm.
idea of how heavy we are on the snow and ice.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And how does because I'm looking at it from a risk management point of view and a compliance point of view, and my immediate thing from a risk perspective is the changing climate and the because every time I look at the news, there's like more and more longer snow events in the northern part of North America. So how do you calculate that external risk into the forecast of your business?
Yeah, it's what we're seeing is the events are becoming more. The precipitation is more of a mixed nature, so it means it's rain, sleet to snow, and back and forth. And the events are also longer in duration. So we are seeing. We've been really watching every bit of the weather for the past 26 years, more so than I ever thought I would as a kid. So, so we're weather experts for the most part, and we're absolutely seeing change. I mean, it's undoubtable. You can see it just in in the response times and everything else, in how we're performing the storms. So we are seeing a change in the weather, and we're just adapting to it. And one of the big changes we've made as a team is all of our management team has to supply a rest plan for their teams, so that they're properly rested throughout the event. And they're not going to get a normal night's sleep by any means, but if they can just get a little bit of downtime, it can save a lot of stress, and can, make them have that lasting, basically the ability to perform throughout the event.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you maintain the culture in your business when the project, let's call them projects rather than weather events, when they
Sure.
last longer and longer? And I'm assuming you also need like casual, temporary staff to join the company during those events. How do you build and how do you maintain your culture in your business?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it's definitely a lot of thank yous, coffees, lunches, and there's the core group that we have, which is our 40 to 50 full-time year-round employees. Then we have a group of seasonal full-time employees, and then we have our employees that I like to, I basically describe it as similar to a wedding, where we have these people that come together during the snow event, and they work throughout it. And so there's those three different groups of people, and it's just constantly making sure that people are being felt like they're appreciated.
Yeah.
This week we have an event we've done for years where we rent a really large boat, and they do a harbor cruise, and that's open to all the snow and ice employees, whether they're seasonal or full time.
Yeah. So it's a lot of thank yous. It's a lot of appreciation, and but also doing fun things to have that sort of team bonding with all kinds of employees and different types of staff members.
Yeah, one of the things that's helped a lot in the last few years is we'll tell our full time people that are year round, spring, summer, and fall, just make a phone call and say, we're still here, we're checking
Mm,
on you and how you're doing, and
yeah,
maybe offer to bring them a coffee wherever they are, just to keep the connection.
yeah, 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 exactly. And from you said you use traction to grow your business, and obviously that's working. So for companies that want to start using traction in their business, um, what experiences can you share from that implementation that you've done over the years?
Well, I was fortunate. I have a close friend that was in EO Boston, and he exited his business and became an integrator and implementer rather. And so I
Hmm.
lucked out there, reading Traction, reading Get a Grip, some of the other books Wickham has put together, um, and then finding a good implementer to help you apply it. I've heard a lot of people that I always think it's funny when I hear someone say, "I'm doing Traction," and I know right away that if they're
Yeah,
saying that, then they're not really doing it. You need to jump in all in. You don't in my opinion, it's not something that you want to try to self-implement.
Okay. So how does that work? You get an implementer. Like, is there like a minimum amount of staff that you need to have in your business to make this work? Or because leading question, I work a lot with accelerators and
Sure.
coming into I'm still part of the EO ecosystem, so I
Yeah.
work a lot with accelerators. So they usually have 2, 3, 4, 5 team members, but are also interested in implementing systems to grow their business. So
Yeah.
how would you use EOS as part of that acceleration of business?
What I found with it, so I've read a million business books, just like you probably have, Ivanka, and like I found like people would, they do their core values, they do the mission statement, they've probably figured out what their leading indicators are, that most of the metrics they should be measuring. They've done a lot of the pieces, but what Traction has done, and I think it's not just you can use, in my opinion, you can probably use any system, whether it's Rockefeller Habits, Traction, or whatever, whatever different system. But what the system did for me is exactly what it says. That's like Microsoft, the platform for your computer, whether it's an Apple or whatever, it glues it all together. And then the bigger thing is the meetings and the accountability. So when you have those quarterly rocks, you have the annual goals, and then you have your weekly scorecard metrics in your to-do list. One of the things that all of those are amazing. But I'll tell you a simple example. Like, we used to have all these company meetings. Gino talks about this in some YouTube videos, but you have some of these company meetings where we would come together, we get into a room, and then you'd see people taking down notes of what they have to do. And then you leave, and a chunk of it would get done. And what Action at EOS did was it has a great format for the weekly meeting at all levels, and you build your to-do list, and then the next week you're checking off if the stuff got done or not, and you're reporting that to everybody else in the meeting. And that's where I just see the top power in that scorecard and the to-do list.
Yeah.
And when I go and sit in other team meetings, because we run about 6 or 7 different levels of team meetings in Traction now in our company. And when I sit into the different ones to check on them once in a while, when I rate the meeting at the end, and my rating always comes from how many items are on the to-do list. If there's only 2 or 3 or 4 items, I'm going to rate that meeting real low. If that group has 10 or 12 or more on the to-do list, in the prior week they crossed out 90+%, I'm giving them a 10.
Yeah.
The amount of money we spend sitting in those rooms, if you're not creating action, you're just wasting time.
Yeah. That's a good one. And that's a really clear, measurable indicator. Like, how many to-dos did you make in your level 10 meeting, and how many of those did you get done by the next week? So that's a really, really good one. I like that.
100%.
And I mean, you probably started out with Rockefeller Habits and scaling up. You moved to EOS. Was there an instigator for the move or the change, or is it pure, different?
Rockefeller Habits, I tried that system, and it wasn't the system that failed. It was, I'll 100% say it was myself. We didn't have enough people on the team, so when I started it, I was like, this is silly. I'm measuring myself, which, there is you should hold yourself accountable, but I just did not have the infrastructure for it yet.
Yeah.
When Gino came out with Traction in EOS, I read the book, and it just really, really, it made a lot of sense to me. And I clearly, I mean, Gino's in strategic coach. He's in EO, or he was in EO. A lot of similarities of things that I've learned over the years. So it makes sense that I was attracted to it. But that's why we moved to it, and we had at the time, it was good timing. We had the team in place, and we had my close friend who had just exited and became an implementer, and he's been phenomenal. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So even for a small accelerator, you would say get an implementer, make the investment, don't do it yourself.
I would. The only thing I'd caution is if you've got a small team, like a real small tight team, you may not need it yet. It's still good to learn it, and I would say maybe then you practice start practicing the L10s and the structure. But if your team's, if you've only got a 2-person leadership team or something, you may not need it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a good recommendation from experience. I'm not saying it's advice.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Hey, let's go back to the risks and risk management and you taking control of your business throughout that growth. Because that's the other thing that's sitting in the back of my head. 10 years ago, you were a totally different entrepreneur than you are now. I mean, you're still the same person, but you've learned so many things over the years. So what would you say, growing your business from 2-3 millions in revenue to 18 million right now? Because I think that's sort of like the trajectory you've done over the past 10 years. What were the biggest risk in those 10 years for your business, but also for you personally?
Well, it's a loaded question.
Actually, yeah, make it a loaded question.
I mean, I don't know if there was a ton of I didn't experience. I would say the bigger risk was not taking the steps early enough. So I'm careful saying this because I don't want someone to be haphazard, but by what I'm sharing. But I would just say that most of us are held back by fear, and at least that's what I'm held back by a lot of times. And oh my God, every time if I make a very educated decision with some, like you said, experience shares from others. Normally, it's those big risks that are educated and they're well thought out that push us ahead the most. And I just some of the stuff is just time. Like I have young entrepreneurs and accelerators that ask me all the time, well, you built this big business. First of all, I'll say it's all relative. My business is small compared to most. But I'll also say it's time. It took me 10 years to get to close to 10 years to get to $1 million. 5 million took several more. And now, as things, I call it like compounding. It just, things grow at a faster rate the bigger you get. And quite frankly, I think it's harder to get to 1 million and even 5 million than it is to get to 10 or 20. Because now you've got more team, more smart people to leverage, so much more in resources. I think the people that are really grinding it out are the ones that are the guys and girls that are an accelerator. They're doing the hard work, and then the other thing, just the knowledge you have. One of my EO mentors told me years ago, I was at his house. I won't forget. I think we were at like 900,000 in revenue or something. And I was on his property doing some work, and I was having a bad week, and he was a great friend, great mentor. And I was complaining, and he said, "John, is that your truck out front? Is that your new truck?" And I said, "Yeah, it's my truck." And he said, "Do you have a warm house to come home to? Are you going out to eat later tonight? Do you have a wife girlfriend that loves you?" And all the answers were yes. Right. And he said, well, quit complaining. Things are pretty good. And I said, well, if I could only, get to like 2 or 3 million, I could hire some more staff, some more people to help make the big decisions. And he said, if I could snap my fingers right now and give you a $3 million business, would you be able to run it? And I said, no, I probably couldn't. So part of the gift in the whole thing is a journey. You have to do the time and understand it and learn it in order to get there. some of these companies where you see VC funded, this is another experience, Ivanka, I'll share, not, but I see some of these companies that come about where they've been handed over 5, 10, 15, 20 plus $million to start a company. And these people have no right with that kind of money, and then the company, some of them do very well, but a lot of them tank. And the reason they tank is because they didn't do the work to get there, and they didn't have the knowledge from actually doing it to get there.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. But what I would say to people is, when some of these younger folk come and say, I wish I could be this. For me, it's like, it's the time to get there. And once you get there and you've gone through those things, you've learned the things really well, you go to do it on the second run, and it is half the time. I've got so many friends that built the companies half the time on the second run.
Yeah, because you have the experience. It's interesting. Like, while you were talking, I was nodding. I'm like, yep. But I was also thinking back to what we were talking about earlier, traction. In order to get traction, you need friction often, because that friction pushes the flywheel forward. And that's exactly the analogy that you're talking about. You need that friction, you need that journey, you need that learning experience to get to the knowledge, understanding, and wisdom comes with gray hairs, apparently.
Yeah.
Well,
I have a little of that too.
But it's so true though. It's what would you have done differently though, knowing what you know now? Like, if you could step back 20 years when you started your business, what changes would you make?
Oh, geez. I'd get into a different business. No. Yeah, no, I don't know if I really have enjoyed it. I've enjoyed most of the journey. I've enjoyed, and to your point, like, thankfully, somebody told me years ago, they're like, you got to always look at the battle scars as learning experiences, and some of them are very expensive learning experiences. But you're right. I mean, the big failures are usually, they net amazing success. It takes some time sometimes. But geez, what would I do different? I probably, most of the real big gains in my business came from some hires I made. So knowing that now, I mean, like a simple thing of hiring a bookkeeper earlier, I was like, I can't afford a bookkeeper. And we hired that first person, and she came in, and thank God she was, someone I could trust, and she was a real hard worker. I still talk to her today. She worked for the company for, I think, 15 years, and changed hats a few times, but just an amazing person. She's still someone I talk to here and there. But as soon as she came in, like within months, I knew I should have hired her 4 years ago. So taking the leap a little earlier to hire some of these reports, and then also, when they don't work out, falling back and looking at, like, what could I have done differently to better set them up for success, and then also getting back on the horse quicker, because sometimes you try to hire the person, and all of a sudden they don't work out, and you're reflecting, like, was it me, was it them? And for me, I delayed on a few of those hires on the second run, and eventually you find the right person, and it just clicks. And then it's a huge, for me, it was a huge success after the right person several times.
Yeah. So it's hire sooner, but hire the right people. So that's a big change that you would make. Any other changes that you would implement earlier?
I would have taken better care of myself. When I got out of I was actually doing the work early on, and when I got out of doing the work, I was still eating and whatnot, like I was out in the field all day. So I gained a lot of weight. I went from, in the US we use pounds. So I went from 185 pounds to 280 at my heaviest. And it took me a while to lose that weight. Now I maintain a pretty good weight. But yeah, making sure that mentally and physically we're healthy, because I took advantage of that early, and that catches up quick when you get older.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting because you're the third person to talk to me about health, mental health, but also physical health, and looking after yourself to be a better entrepreneur. So it's definitely something that's on. Maybe it's our age bracket. I don't know. But it's definitely to be an entrepreneur for the long term. In the long run, you do need to look after yourself, your health, physical and mental health. What is your health routine? How do you stay? I mean, you go for hikes, but what's your daily routine? How do you stay healthy mentally and physically?
I do the best to really stay in work. I do my best to stay doing what I really love to do. So trying, to delegate off. And again, this is a luxury. As the companies get bigger, you're more able to do, because you have to wear a lot of hats at the beginning. At least I did. But delegating off as many of the tasks that just decrease my energy level as I can. And usually you hear it in all the books, but it's not until I did it that I saw it happen. Usually you can hand those off to someone that loves to do it, and they do it way better. So doing that, making sure I note whenever I find something that's going to recharge my battery, and doing more of that, and being intentional about putting it in the calendar. So I was somebody that didn't get a massage until I was probably 35. And now it's pretty much monthly, and whenever I travel. And when I get one here locally, I book the next one.
Yeah. So, that's a good point. Yeah.
Being intentional about family time and vacations, getting that in the calendar. So there's something to look forward to on that note. Setting my goals regularly so I can be looking forward to those and working towards something. Helping my family and my peers set goals. All of that, I'd say. And then from a health standpoint, I've recently read a book, Eat to Live. So I'm working on that lifestyle now, just to really be sure what I'm putting into my body is nutrient rich, and limiting the things that I love a glass of wine, but I'm really limiting the alcohol these days. And I'd say that's probably some of the big things. And then the exercise, for me, the food has been more important than the exercise, but I do exercise every day, 6 days a week, even if it's only 15 minutes a day, just anything, just to get some exercise.
Yeah. And to keep the routine up and to keep moving.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is a bit of a marathon that we're running, isn't it? It's it's not a little sprint, although for some people they do look at it as a sprint. So again, looking back at the last 10 years, what are the things that you're going to take forward into the next 10 years? What are the biggest lessons learned that you're taking forward?
I want to teach my kids, a few things that I learned. I'm writing a couple of books now. One's for my family and one's for business. And I'm writing them more. It's not to sell a bunch of books. I know that the reality is there's a lot of those books out there already. It's to pass on what I have learned. And what I want my kids to learn is, I think communication is a huge step to be successful. So the better you can communicate, the more self-aware, at least again, my experience, the more self-aware I am, the more I understand how I show up to my peers and to my family and everything else, how it affects everything around me. So just being a really good communicator. is something I want to teach my kids, and I want to continue to work on myself. And then I would say, putting my goals out there right now. We're pushing the limits in the business. We're growing roughly by 30% a year, and that's been fun. And we're really looking to model the masters. We've got a couple of the largest industry. Basically the largest people in my space are close friends of mine. So they've been ahead of me already, and being able to model them has been incredible. It's been a huge gift. So being able to continue that, and I think outside of that, I just read a book that's been pretty popular in the entrepreneurial space called Die with Zero. Have you heard of that, Ivanka?
No.
So I'll give you the real quick on it.
It's a Die with Zero, or what was the title?
Die with Zero is the title. And it's not, the meaning isn't to literally, to leave the earth without anything, but a lot of what he says, again, makes a lot of sense to me. He says, when you're young, you trade time for money, and as you age, you trade money for time.
Yeah.
And money is basically a utility in order to get what you want for it, right? To basically have resources. And what he says is there's a really great period of time to use it. You're not going to use it too much before you're 20. You're not going to use it too much after you're 80, or as much. So the highest, return on that utility is really between your 20s, your 30s, and 70 plus years old. So I want to make sure I'm not, we're not like just making money and working, whether we love it or not. We're not working for no reason,
Yeah.
Do what we, enjoy it, at least for me, enjoy it, have fun, create wealth and more resource for my family and the people around me. But I don't want to die in the office chair. I want to have fun with my family, have fun with, myself, and enjoy the healthy years that we have ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. And they can be plenty. There'll be lots of healthy years ahead. But it's, I like that idea of seeing money as a utility that you can give back. You can give back to yourself, your family, but also others. And it's, I think that's a very healthy way of looking at it. And it's quite interesting because, when my father passed away last year, and I came back home, and I said to my husband, like, we're building all this asset and wealth, and at the end of the day, you can't take it with you. Like, it's, you need $10,000 for a funeral or a cremation, and you need a bit of extra that you want to give to your direct families, but that's pretty much it. Because other than that, nobody's going to be happier when it's a lot more. So it's also, for me, it was the realization of not just thinking of money for future generations, but also for something for me, for us to enjoy for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we're a bit on the same trajectory. Yeah. Maybe it's because I'm 52. I don't know. Maybe it's an age thing.
No, I think you're spot on. I mean, the mantra of it's okay. I'm referencing EO here, right?
Mm-hmm. I do it all the time because I'm part of EO still, and I love it. It's such an important part of my life.
Yeah, and EO has always said it's about the experiences, the once in a lifetime experiences. And I remember growing up, it was all the vacations that I remembered, and I think the reason for that was they were outside of the normal day. They were different, right? So my friend, who's also my implementer, just mentioned one of his goals is to create 3 coffee table book viable vacations a year. So basically, like, 3 vacations a year that he can take all the pictures from, and they'll be coffee table book worthy for his kids and his family, and until they're through school. And I really like that idea because, again, what are we doing all this for? Um, enjoy it and enjoy the time.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And isn't that the reason why we run the businesses? Isn't that the reason why we do what we do? Because, and that's something that my husband does really, really well, and I admire him for it. Like the moment my son or our son was born, he would go and have experiences with him, and he would take the time out to go camping in the middle of winter and do all sorts of crazy things. And they're in October, they're off for like an 8 or 10 day hike through Tasmania, and they're doing all these things together, and I admire him for that, because he works really hard in the business to create time to make those memories and have those experiences together. And I think that's the richness of being in business and being an entrepreneur.
I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a cool thing, and yeah. So I thought that book helped me clarify some of that. I remember my first EO university I went on. I was on the bus, and I was in my early 20s, and I asked a bunch of the EO members. I said, what are you shooting for? What's your goal for the business? And they clarified, what do you mean, next week, next month, next year? I said, no, the end goal. What's the goal? And almost everyone at the time said 100 million. That's what I want to hit. If I get 100 million, I'd be happy, right? And I remember I asked several of them, well, okay, why?
Mm.
No one could answer. Nobody could answer why. They just
No.
had this number of 100 million, right? And when if half of these people could have hit 100 million, they would have just put a goal for 200 million.
Mm.
So it's like, think about, and that's what I think this book is good for. Think about what you're trying to achieve. Like, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
I think it's awesome to have these big goals. You could make it 1 billion. I don't care, but just have a reason behind it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And the reason behind it, I mean, that's the passion piece of being in business, isn't it? Like and you don't necessarily have to be passionate about the widget that you sell or the thing that you do, but what's the passion? What's the why? Why are you in business? Why do you do the things you do? And why do you get out of bed every day to go into that, daily routine? And
Yeah.
it has to be more than just making money. It has to be, because it's not enough. And
Right.
maybe it's enough in the first couple of years, but then to keep going on that marathon, like we were saying, and to stay sane and to stay healthy, and there has to be more. So what is your why? What is your passion? Obviously it's not $100 million, but what is it?
Oh God, the dollar amount it really is funny to me now, because what I said I would I would retire for, back like 6 years ago, we've already, that's been passed. So the dollars it doesn't matter. I really think now it is about, making sure I'm doing every day what I love to do. I'm being really aware of how I'm affecting and how I'm showing up to my family. That's number one. And then my own self, I used to be so guilty about taking time for myself, and then I've cleaned that up so that I'm doing stuff for myself. So those are like really the two main things. And I think, I think, like, again, a fair thing is that my kids are young. I have twin 7-year-old girls and a 2-year-old boy. And I want my kids to one, be able to, be successful on their own. And then more importantly, I had a YPO mentor who had said, I thought it was the coolest thing. He was telling me he's now, I think, 92. And he said, John, if you can, get your kids into life sports. So like sailing, tennis, skiing, stuff that you can do together.
Mm.
He loves sailing, so he took his kids sailing a lot. His 2 out of 3 kids became entrepreneurs. One of them has become incredibly successful, and he owns a sailboat that he takes on races. They do. I'm not a sailboat guy, but they do these races And I know weight has a factor, and his dad, the guy, my mentor, is 92. I asked him what he was doing for the weekend, and he said he was going to Rhode Island to race with his son on his son's sailboat.
How cool.
And to me, that's like the ultimate success if his
Yeah.
son wants him to be with him on that boat. So if I can get my kids to, I say it funny, get my kids to, but if I can raise my kids successfully, it's having them want to, be part of their life, and for them to be successful,
Yeah.
And I'm not going to BS here. And for me to have fun too, I want myself and my wife to have fun going through the journey.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's not about being selfless all the time. It's
right.
We're in this journey too. It's not just about the kids.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, the kids are one thing, but yeah, absolutely. We want to have a good, enjoy it. I want to, people say it's kind of morbid, but they say, like, if you're on your deathbed and you look back, when you have a cool story to share and something that you were like grateful to have, like, yeah, I want to have that. So I think we're working towards that pretty well, but keep doing it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You have an amazing story to share. So thank you so much for your time today, because I know you're super busy. Next week, I'm talking to Andy Meadows. Are you still in touch with him?
Oh, yeah. I haven't spoken with Andy in a long time, but I follow him on Facebook, and he's doing some awesome things. I should reconnect with him.
Yeah, no, I'm so keen to hear what he's been up to, because his new SaaS business, Blink, I think that's how you say it, because it's bl.ink. So I'm sure it's Blink. Sounds really amazing. So I can't wait to hear his story. And I must admit, I really enjoy reconnecting with all the people from our EMP program, and just to hear the journey and to see what's been happening. So thank you so much for your time, John. Any final parting words before we cut this off and go offline for our offline little chat?
No, well, sure. I mean, I could say it online or offline, but I always enjoyed seeing you every year, and from Australia, Shane as well. I haven't spoken to him in quite a bit. So thank you so much for reaching out. And anyone that's listening to myself or Andy or any of these, people, I think that's my the only reason I've even gotten to where I am. Not that I'm uber successful, but it's really been listening to other people. So it's like just trying to pull a few gold nuggets out of everybody.
Yeah. Very, very true. The gold nuggets, they're so important. Okay, thank you again, John. Don't leave. I'll end the stream here, and next week it's Andy Meadows from Blink.